So I'm standing in an acoustic guitar pod that I've set up, record acoustic overdubs for a project that we're recording right now. I wanted to try a whole lot of different mics, and that's what you'll see, this big mess right here. I have some of my favorites that I record with and some interesting choices down here to kind of cross the gamut of different acoustic sounds that would yield different results in context of a mix. Up here, you'll see us still use 013 for like an over-the-shoulder thing, and this is just context for like player position, and mixed with any one of these mics yields a more realistic response of a guitar in a room to me. So I like to set this up and it sounds great. But these down here being the main focus, we have a C414, an AKG C414, my absolute go-to for acoustics. And this is also checking my own bias with a test like this. This is a killer mic. It sounds great on everything, and I would contend that it's one of the true workhorses of the studio. And if you put it on a source, you may not like it for that particular source, but it's not gonna sound bad. It's one of those mics. Super useful with like even the blending between the polarity choices on this thing. On the back, you have switches for the roll off and the pad. Super useful mic. Sounds great on acoustic, sounds great on vocals. Snare bottom, it's an absolute dream. We have the C314. AKG sent me this to try because they know I love the 414. What I found in my testing was these are not the same mic. To my ears, I don't even think this is the same capsule. That is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're shopping for a cheaper 414, don't expect to get the results of the 414 with this. That said, it is tasty in its own very special way. But I hadn't heard it in context, and I wanted to try it blind against some other things. The Mictech CMC6 with an MK21 capsule. This is a favorite with people doing a lot of orchestral recordings. If you want a very flat mic that's going to give you a natural response and spit out exactly what the source is, this mic is typically where those people will turn. Is it the right choice for acoustic? Let's find out. The other one, an SM7B. You know what that looks like. Not a typical choice for acoustics, but I wanted to toss it on there because it's a mic that a lot of people know what that sounds like. In context of all these other things, it might be the anchor that could pull context to all of these in a blind shootout. And that's what we're gonna do. What I want to do is give you soloed versions of acoustic playing by itself, mic to mic, and then in context. Now the context here is basically a tracking scenario. This is not mixed yet. This is the song basically as we're tracking it. This was an overdub session, so the rhythm has already been cut. The singer has not come in to do their final vocals yet. This is in a very work in progress stage, but that's where you're gonna be making these mic choices and where that is important. So hearing it at that stage is a pretty good judge of if you're gonna like something or not, even down the line for the mix. I was surprised with what I liked the best. I was really surprised because I definitely have my biases going into this, and especially working in context of sessions where things are really fast moving and you have to make decisions really quickly, you go with the safe decision. And for me, that's the C414. I'm probably giving away too much information already that I was surprised with the result. But to be clear, I still really like this sound. But the one that I picked as my favorite was really surprising to me. I'll just say that. Real quick guys, I am gonna put the results to this at the end of the video. Don't spoil it if you already go and get the answers for everybody. I wanna see what everybody comes up with in a blind comparison, but the results will be at the end of the video. See ya. I don't think any one of these are bad, but I feel like hearing this on an acoustic guitar is a really good representation of what it's gonna do on a whole lot of different instruments. Hearing the relationships between these different mics, we can see if something's brighter or darker or more scooped or less scooped and what that would do to different sources. Every one of these is useful and I could use them in a mixed context and be totally happy, but that's not what this test is about. There are vastly different price points sitting here. The MK21 being far and away the most expensive, the SM7B being the most affordable, I think, in the bunch. Then the C414 and the 313, I'll put all the prices up here. The 013, I'm gonna pop in and out as context for just the room so you can see what's happening. I tried to get the capsules as close as I could to each other. Obviously, there's gonna be some differences here. That said, I was super stoked with every mic. And for this thing at a price point of like 800 bucks, obviously to some, that's an expensive mic and it might be your first nice mic that you really get, but I could certainly see it being very useful in a whole lot of different situations. That said, let's listen to some tracks. I would love to know what you thought. This is definitely one test, and I don't think there's any perfect test that I could do comparing mics, because there's so many situations that aren't going to be perfect for how you would decide. My room sounds different than yours. The way the guitar player was playing would probably be different from you. That acoustic, which I thought was throaty, very Taylor-like, may be different from what you're actually playing. However, hearing these against each other, you could pick something that was your gut reaction that you liked that the most, or what you could see being the most most useful tone, what might be able to take EQ, what boxes you into a corner. Putting your choices down below. Don't spoil it if you already went and looked. Let people decide what they like for themselves. But let me know if you were surprised. Let me know what you picked first and why you liked it. But first, guitar. Describe, what is this?
Yeah, so my dad, he worked at Taylor for a while in like the late 90s. And at the time, I don't want to get anyone in trouble for this, but the company policy was if you paid for the scrap parts, you could do whatever you want with them. So he built, I think, 3 guitars. This one is, he calls it the Model 2, because it was the second one he built. But it's a part for part, the exact same thing as like a 612 or 614 CE. And I love it. It's been my only acoustic for a long time, but I really like it. It's unique, you know, it's got a lot of sentimental value, but it also sounds killer. And I don't love dots typically, and so I love that it's just the one inlay, like, and he carved that himself.
He did?
Yeah. So he did inlays and top, was his department.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Does he still build guitars?
He doesn't. He hasn't built one in probably 15 years.
All right, guys. Are you ready for this? Mic A was the SM7B, my favorite of the whole bunch, and I was shocked. I picked the 414 90% of the time to record because in my mind, that's just what an acoustic sounds like. And it still sounds great, objectively great. But the SM7 had this weirdly cool thing, and Jonah, the player, completely agreed in the moment. He said, if you hadn't told me in context, I would have thought it was a U87, which is really weird. Mic B was the AKG C414, which that's my mainstay. I could pick that out of a crowd any day. The C314 was mic C, objectively way darker than the 414, and they were both set up on the same pattern. Those capsules were as close as I could get them to each other, and it felt like a completely different mic. I was initially a little bummed because I thought it would be the little brother to the 414. However, I think these are 2 totally different beasts, and putting this mic on an obnoxiously bright thing would be perfect. This guitar was not terribly bright. It had that kind of dark, throaty thing in the room, but if this was on a super bright acoustic, the 314 would be the right answer. So having those 2 different tools, super helpful. D was the MK21, and I was a little surprised with this one. I normally would reach for this in a situation like this for like a flat neutral response, but in this situation, on this guitar, I didn't like it, and it was the most expensive one out of the whole bunch. Shocked. The big surpriser for us though was putting the 013 on the over the head. That was just something I added on a whim during the session, and it ended up being like the glue that held everything together. I think I'm gonna continue to do that. If you guys wanna check out the C314, I will link it down below. It is delightfully dark. Don't spoil it for everybody else. I'll see you in the next one.